Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the show. We are live from Los Angeles, and this is your host, Young Brando. We are going to talk about watches. We are going to wrap up our coverage of the Phillips Decade 1 auction. There are a few more watches that I really do want to show you. Um, and we are going to get right to it. But before that, as you guys know, I always love warming up my vocal cords with some of my beautiful stuff from Instagram. There we go. Follow me on Instagram. I'm on the edge of reaching 25,000 followers there. So I really appreciate any help you would give me in that. Hit the like in advance already. We are in for a ride. And again, we have a very humble super chat goal of 5 super chats of $5 or more so that this watch talk may go until midnight and possibly further. But that's certainly at least an hour of watch talk. You guys know this is an independent platform, so the support is essential for its livelihood, its very existence. Um, and again, it's just the return of the kind of knowledge and insight you always gain from my platforms. You guys remember a few days ago, I posted the photos from the introduction of Michael Schumacher's signature models by Omega when they first signed him on in 1996. Of course, that overlaps with his move to Scuderia Ferrari as well, and those were presented in two different colors. Later on, joined by a blue as well, by the way. So if you ever wanted to kind of complete the collection, get the trilogy, so to speak. But they were in the Rosso Corsa, of course, the classic racing red, and Giallo Modena, which is, of course, a tribute to their home city. And of course, you know, it is one of their colors as well. They use it as the background to the prancing horse logo for sure. Ralf Schumacher, his brother, was also signed on to Omega at the time, and he was racing for Jordan F1. And of course, he had this beautiful racing suit in yellow, and he combined that at the 1997 Brazilian Grand Prix, Interlagos, with the Modena yellow edition. And of course, they also shared a manager in Willy Weber. And there you go. You see the two of them, the manager Weber and Ralf Schumacher. And this time he's wearing the red. So he had both versions of his brother's signature model, the Omega Speedmaster reduced or automatic, with a seconds track that has this checkered flag racing dial configuration, yellow dial with red accents. Even the hands are partially painted in that same yellow, and the red one basically reverses that configuration. Of course, it is yellow with red with yellow accents in that particular case. Feel free to click these links, hit the likes, and leave a comment or two if you would like. That's always appreciated. And I respond to everything, as always, as you guys know. My latest post from earlier in the evening, Pharrell who, of course, has been a watch collector for longer than most people I know, longer than I am, I think. I think he was already in the game in the 90s when I was still a young teen who thought a Swatch diver in neon yellow was the coolest thing on the planet. And here you see him from the US Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, from a few years back, 2022, in fact, when he was wearing what was then new Richard Mille 7402, RM 7402 automatic tourbillon with the gold carbon TPT case on the 18 karat pink gold Cuban link bracelet, which I think is just, it's cool. It's cool. It's not really my thing, but for people who can pull it off, for them to offer something like that, I think is quite interesting because there's hardly anything they can't do at that price point, right? So they might as well experiment with these kinds of things. And I think, especially that tonneau case, in the way they approach it, just looks great. You have those two carbon parts, the front and back bezel, which, by the way, are striated with those, I believe in this case, 24 karat yellow gold leaves, which gives an additional texture to what is already a very interesting material. The mid case is in pink gold, which of course goes quite well with the link bracelet. And the movement itself is also consisting of both 18 karat pink gold and yellow gold parts, like 5N pink gold, 3N yellow gold. So you have a lot of depth and play in what is in their signature skeletonized look. Right, let's dive right in. I will send the link down there. We're still looking at the Phillips Decade 1 auction. This is part 4 of our coverage, but if there are any pieces that you want me to take a look at, whether I covered them or not before, it's no problem. I'll be more than happy to jump in yet again and talk about them with as much detail as possible. And at any rate, again, if you have any watch-related questions, just like the lot numbers, you can send them in with a super chat, and I will make sure to respond to them with as much detail as possible. And I don't mind taking digressions, especially as long as the questions are watch-related. There's so much that I love talking about when it comes to watches. I hardly discriminate against any brand or taste, even though even I have my limits. But let's start with something that we haven't yet covered. We're going to look at lot 133, which is a very unique Cartier tank. It is an 18 karat yellow gold special order, open worked at the rectangular dial center. Comes from kind of the 50s and 60s. I don't think there's an exact record to it, and we can learn more from the lot essay, I'm sure. It's specified as a special order and apparently recorded in the Cartier archives with a drawing that presents the original design of this watch, describing it as montre bracelet squelette, skeletonized wristwatch, dating it 1968. Whether that was an archival record of what has been already done or contemporary to the order, I think is not specified. That's why the lot says the year of the watch is 1956 to 1968. Also because the movement, of course, that is fitted to the watch was originally made in 1956. So let's read it. An intriguing and interesting specimen, the present watch is a marriage of two powerhouses, Cartier and Audemars Piguet. This rare wristwatch was originally born as an AP, fitted with the skeletonized movement number 61328, elegant caliber 10 TS, registered with case number 7710, reference 5036 BA, another yellow gold encased watch, and sold in 1956 to GG in Paris. The watch was later subject to an extraordinary transformation. In 1968, Cartier redesigned the case, added the dial, while deliberately leaving the movement visible to highlight the technical refinement of Audemars Piguet. And you can see it is, in fact, open-worked in the more ornate and even Baroque way that is very much signature AP, especially from that Royal Oak, but also post-Royal Oak period too, right? You know, this is how they used to do these things. A lot of times with, of course, outside help of specialists and experts as well. With beautiful hand engravings that are alternatively in some kind of follow some kind of floral pattern, or sometimes a more nautical wave-like pattern as well. Let's continue, because the tank case itself is very special as a variant. It's what they call eagle beak, I believe, in which the way the lugs taper kind of resembles a beak, right? And I'm sure you, even from this angle, see some of that. The gold hallmark, not of Swiss origin, confirms the French intervention, and that's with vintage watches especially. That's a good way to either confirm or discern the original market of the watch, right? Because the French market, well, rather the French government had certain hallmarks that confirm the gold carriage of the watch. The Portuguese market had something else. The American market had other sorts of restrictions. So these kinds of details on the watch, which is sometimes on the inside of the lugs, outside of the lugs, on the case back, inside the case back, are really what you can discern. And there are even these kinds of codes, for example, in various chronographs, 3-letter codes, which again specify the origin of that movement, or rather the original market to which that movement was sent, right? So there are all these kinds of forensic details, you might say, that can either help you trace the origin of a watch, or confirm what was stated. Here's a look at the movement, which is, of course, form-fitted and beautifully open-worked. Signed Audemars Piguet. Got those gorgeous, oversized jewels, the rubies that bind the gear train to the open-work bridges, really to the central bridge. Hand-wound movement, of course, as you have seen. And there's the French hallmark on the left flank of the case, which incidentally itself looks like an eagle beak. Funny coincidence, of course. Really, really beautiful piece. And again, because they're celebrating their 10th anniversary, they have chosen a lot of rare pieces, some prototypes even that we are going to look at, that I think even surprise in terms of their usual curation, which is, quite fascinating to begin with. This is a very interesting Cartier tank with a unique history, with a very remarkable trajectory, with an AP movement. Lot 133, the estimated value of the piece is in the range between 50,000 to 100,000 in US dollars. The next piece I want to look at is a true prototype. And those of you who know your history, so to speak, and those of you who may have, in fact, perhaps listened to me, listened to my obsession about the watch in question, will perhaps recognize what this prototype was turned into, and feel free to hazard your guesses in the chat. But this is a prototype of an automatic tourbillon by André Beiner and Moritz Grimm, project P29, prototype number 2. The movement is housed in a yellow gold rectangular case, and the lot also includes the original drawings and correspondence as well. Beautiful guilloche finish on the dial, which is also part of the movement, of course, again, fully exhibited on the dial side, with the case back itself serving as the base plate. Here's another look. Some of you may have already recognized the watch, and I will share what it is soon enough. But let's talk about this particular prototype first. The present watch is a historically important creation of two brilliant engineers, Moritz Grimm and André Beiner, renowned for their groundbreaking innovations, including the record-thin Delirium. They pushed horological boundaries with this prototype, the world's first ultra-thin tourbillon with automatic winding. Just 2.7 millimeters thick, It set a record by integrating the movement into the caseback, right? The caseback used as the base plate with the movement jewels peeking through. That wasn't just an aesthetic flourish. It is actually a consequence of the caseback literally being used as the base plate of the movement. A novel hammer winding system using a heavy platinum oscillating mass. That's where the name of the project and the prototype number is inscribed, right? That basically oscillates back and forth even as it charges the movement. I'm still looking for guesses in the chat, but hey, at least hit the like button. Let yourselves known, announce yourselves. Say hi, don't be shy. I won't bite. At least I can't through the screen. So you're all safe. Audemars Piguet later acquired the project, launching the caliber 2870 in 1986. Now we remember this is the self-winding tourbillon by Audemars Piguet, tourbillon automatique design that has its inspiration in Egyptomania, literally trying to replicate a relief from an Egyptian temple, ancient Egyptian temple, designed by Jacqueline Dimier, who led the creations department in AP for decades and who was herself protege of Gerald Janta. She's also the designer of Royal Oak 2, as it's called, the original feminine iteration, feminine variant of the Royal Oak. Right? It also goes by, I think, reference number 8638, I want to say. But you can see this kind of flips the movement and also converts the hammer-like weight into the AP signature, or rather AP initials logo that peeks through this aperture at 6 o'clock as the movement winds itself. And the tourbillon then ends up being transposed to the traditional 11 o'clock with the sun rays emanating from out of that position. And as you can see, it is in fact the same movement with your crown on the back to set the time. Let's go back to the prototype, which is lot 138. Hey, Von Kroll, how are you doing, man? Yeah, that's, well, honestly, to say that it has no precedence would be ludicrous, because Breguet's original winding system, original automatic winding system, was also a hammer design. So the idea of using this kind of weight to wind the movement by the motion, by your own kinetic motion, is not an entirely novel idea, but they have implemented it beautifully here because it again allows the movement to be so incredibly thin, right? If you were using a full oscillating weight system, especially in this kind of rectangular shape, you would inevitably sacrifice, another half millimeter, possibly more, right? They literally broke the record with this one. And AP bought it. I think they initially prototyped it for Omega, but Omega had no use for it at the time, and AP ended up buying it. Maybe, I don't think the lot essay says anything about that history, but that's something I distinctly remember. So AP later acquires the project, launching it as caliber 2870 in 1986, inside reference 25643. Again, the yellow gold example is the most common, but it came in a variety of metals. There's some outrageously beautiful platinum examples of it, even with the dial inlaid with thin slivers of mother of pearl in varying shades to convey that sunray effect. They're truly stunning. Of course, the yellow gold one fits the sun theme so well that I think that is incredibly collectible. And the piece comes with a whole, again, ancient Egypt themed presentation box that in and of itself, I think, makes this a very, very interesting piece indeed. And again, if you scroll down on my Instagram for a little bit, you'll see it. By the way, that will become more of a thing on my Instagram. I think, beyond harvesting, archival historical wrist shots to offer glimpses into horological history, and again, discovering some of the newer stuff in contemporary photography. I will also do more often these sorts of historical moments. And in fact, I have one coming up on Monday. I have done it before in terms of this watch. I've done it on the first examples of the Aquanaut in white gold and with a gem set dial. So you can hunt those down. I've done it with some of Gaddafi's Pateks or Patek ellipses specifically made for Gaddafi, with the proto Tiffany dial, so to speak. Oh, yeah, Von Krul, you were talking about the earlier piece that we were looking at. Well, aren't we talking about this? It's the same movement. This is the same movement. They just exposed it differently, right? The original prototype basically is an open dial concept, whereas AP and Jacqueline Dimier specifically, the designer, gave it a very substantive theme. This is just a naked watch, basically. It's a proof of concept, so to speak, right? It's a working movement, the thinnest automatic winding tourbillon. And what AP produced out of it was, I think, the first serially produced automatic tourbillon, the first tourbillon with a titanium cage, the lightest tourbillon escapement, all of it. But this is essentially the same watch if we are talking about the same thing. The advent of electrodischarge machining, EDM, in the early 1980s made possible for Beiner and Grimm the ultra-precise components needed for such a breakthrough. Harnessing this technology, they created the foundation for AP's legendary Ra tourbillon of 1986. More than a technical feat, it reignited the tourbillon as a viable wristwatch complication and helped spark the mechanical revival that restored Swiss haute horlogerie to global prominence. I mean, obviously, you also have Daniel Roth's initiative, certainly with Breguet and his own brand, that really ignited the spark as one of the ultimate aesthetic feats, at the very least, of high horology. This particular lot is accompanied by Maurice Grimm's original technical drawings. The present lot is not only a prototype of immense horological importance, but also once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the discerning collector to acquire a cornerstone of modern watchmaking history. This is lot 138 for the prototype that gave rise to the first serially produced self-winding tourbillon, the thinnest tourbillon in its time. The André Beiner and Moritz Grimm Project P29, prototype number 2. The estimated value of the piece is between 38,100 to 76,300 in US dollars. Now, I think it must be me, von Krul. By saying it's the same watch, I mean it's the same core. It's the exact same movement, which here is just a prototype. Here, it's encased differently, but it's exactly the same movement. AP just like how, you know, they do it, how smaller brands do it with cheaper movements. They put their own rotor, right? That's the first thing they do. AP did it the same, except here, again, it has a little bit of an aesthetic flourish. It's a way of inserting their logo, because they love double branding, AP, as you know. Like, you know, it has to be the signature, which here it's actually on the crystal, and then their logo. Anyway, so this was lot 138, the prototype movement, which gave rise to the AP 25643 that came out in 1986. We're looking at the Decade 1 auction by Phillips Geneva. Please hit the like button while you're at it. And if you have any watch-related questions, if you want me to focus on any particular lots, please feel free to send in the lot number with a super chat, and I would be more than happy to dive right in. In either case, you should consider supporting the channel with a super chat. Getting, of course, membership for yourself or gifting it on to others is a great way to support the channel too. It gives access to exclusive content. And I think most of these live streams too are going to be members only soon enough. So you might as well get in line for that. You might as well be prepared for that, because it is impossible for me to sustain this level of work and attention for free. So just keep that in mind. And if you prefer some other ways, of course, those are also available, and I outline them in the video description So feel free to take a look. Nevertheless, we continue. If you have followed the link from Instagram or elsewhere, Twitter perhaps, feel free to subscribe. I have watch content like this on a daily basis, and I'm sure you will learn a lot from it. We're looking at lot 24. It's an Eterna chronograph with a pulsation dial, a pulsometer, a so-called doctor's watch. Eterna is, of course, one of the older brands, originally founded in 1856, co-founders of ETA, right? The movement maker that I think to a certain extent still defines some of the most important, widely used tractor movements, so to speak. Of course, this comes from a time, I think, right from out of war, from the immediate post-war period, from around 1945. Stainless steel case, 34 millimeters in diameter. Pulsation dial obviously is kind of a medical instrument, or turns the watch into a medical instrument of sorts, right? When you engage the chronograph and start counting the pulse of your subject, of your patient, you count up to 30 and you stop. And obviously, the chronograph seconds hand, which here has a red tip, will stop roughly at the heartbeat rate of your patient, which is great. I mean, it's makes it kind of cool from anyone of the medical field to own a watch like this. Hey, Ryan, how are you doing, man? Good to see you today, too. The piece has been beautifully preserved, by the way, both in terms of the contours of the case and its finishing, and the condition of the dial, which is enviable. The pulsometer inscribed on the periphery in a light blue, Arabic numerals for the hour markers, classic 2-register layout with a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock and continuous running seconds at 9. I mean, look at this case, right? There are a few nicks and dings. Look how crisp that serial number is there. This is an Eterna chronograph from the immediate post-war period, 34 millimeters in stainless steel, with a pulsation dial, a doctor's chronograph, so to speak. Lot 24, the estimated value of the piece is somewhere between 2,500 to 5,000 in US dollars. Again, I'd like to remind you, there's a very humble goal of 5 super chats of $5 or more, so that we can take this conversation until midnight. The link is also pinned if you want to be part of a panel to talk about this together. Angelus is another brand, another time-honored brand that used to make some great chronographs. They have been more recently revived. And in fact, they created another chronograph with a similar concept in collaboration with Messina Lab, using the caliber A5000. This is the OG. This is the original Angelus or Angelus doctor's watch at lot 25. Evermore Gem. I don't want to expose more of your name, but I did receive your message. Yes, the Grimm Bayer prototype has been previously auctioned. I don't remember how recent it was, but I remember it being sold by Phillips before, and it's the exact prototype. It's number 2 again. It's this piece that was sold, and when you start following auctions often enough, you'll quickly realize that this is a lot of times the case. I don't want to make it seem like it's always the same people and always the same watches. That would be a little bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of these rare pieces, or relatively rare but extremely aspirational and desirable pieces, one, because they're already very limited in number, and two, people who want to sell them is always the same group, sort of, right? There are a lot of yeah, about the members only. I don't even care about having enough people, right? I just want to be recognized for my work. So if it's just 2 people or 3 people listening, but they are paying for it, that's enough for me. And Ryan, thank you so much. Do it in any which way you like, whether it's $4 or $5, $120. If you give $120 super chat, I will just end the goal, and we can continue until midnight easily. Why not? We can do it like that right now. So we're looking at the Angelus doctor's watch, which has also a pulsometer, graduated for 10 pulsations, which, by the way, 10 and 15 is a little better, I find, because it's how shall I put it? Counting up to 30 to take someone's pulse, especially in this day, it's a little long. 10 or 15 is great. This one has, in addition to the pulsometer for taking the heart rate, graduated for 10 pulsations, it also has a meter for respirations, number of respirations per minute, so even more complete as a doctor's watch. 37 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel, and it's a monopusher chronograph. So that single pusher at 2 o'clock is what you use for start, stop, and reset, which again, for more utilitarian instruments, it might make sense, right? That's of course also in modern time, it's usually harder to execute a different kind of movement architecture to handle. That's why it's harder to come by. This is in a great condition, and it is from like the mid 60s, circa 1966, it says. And again, it was a design that they revived very recently. I think it was a limited edition, probably 100 pieces. It must have been sold out already. And it wasn't necessarily cheap. I don't remember. And this is one of those pieces that are very attractively, quote unquote, priced in terms of the estimated value, but I'm sure it will go for much more because lot 25 has a pre-auction estimate set in the range between 1,300 to 2,500 in US dollars. Lot 36 is a beautiful Rolex Daytona, hand wound and with an oyster case, specifically the reference 6263. Usually these kinds of that's probably one of the most desirable reference numbers, right? Because it combines the aesthetic of that bakelite / plastic insert for the tachymeter bezel, which is prized by collectors, and it has the screw down pushers, which makes it a little more substantive, a little more modern than the pump pushers, which can fly around the room, with some vintage pieces. It's not something that happens every day, of course. Don't take me wrong, and I don't want to, as an enthusiast of vintage watches, I don't want to, give you the idea that they are that flimsy. They really are not. But screw down pushers are always better. And again, when we talk about waterproofness of watches, a lot of people always think of immersive kind of conditions and environments, right? The depth rating of a watch or the waterproofness in general of a watch is not necessarily a hard number, right? It should be a guideline for you to see how much pressure it can be subjected to, and how waterproof it really is, rather than necessarily thinking of it as this is how far down in water I can immerse this watch, right? So any measure that is taken to seal the waterproofness of the watch also protects the watch and its movement and overall its interior against the elements, against dust, against humidity, right? So if you live in places, for example, where it's humid and you wear your pump pusher vintage chronograph on a daily basis, it's not the best idea, right? It can cause humidity ingress. So that's why people love, when it comes to vintage Daytonas, the screw down pushers, because it's a little more safe. It is a little more nicely sealed as a case. This lot 36 is is something they call big eyes. Because as you see in this reverse panda configuration, the chronograph registers, the subdials, are noticeably larger, which makes it rare and possibly more desirable. It's just a great looking watch for sure. In general, by the way, I'm exasperated by this auction to a certain extent because they don't have any movement shots of any watches. Even the exhibition case back pieces, they haven't put much of anything. I find it hard to write back evermore, so I will respond to what you're writing there, what you're saying there. I'm happy to compare things as well. If you, again, if you have a specific request, feel free to, send in a super chat or PayPal a certain amount. I'm happy to do it. I did look through the Monaco Legend Group auction, and I have a live stream on that. But I'm happy to bring up pieces from that auction as well to compare with these. This 6263 has a relatively unique dial with those big eyes, so to speak, with the larger chronograph registers. It's a very nice example. And lot 36 has a pre-auction estimate in the range between 89,000 to 178,000 in US dollars. And same thing with the 6238, by the way. The beyond being paired with the bracelet, I had looked at this example in an earlier auction, but I will quickly give you a look here. It has an additional pulsometer at the center of the dial that's inscribed in this light blue. And again, with a graduated for 15 pulsations. So again, count to 15 once you engage the chronograph, stop, and you will get the heart rate. We haven't looked at some of the independent brands represented here. Here's a relatively obscure one. We're looking at lot 41, Kikuchi Nakagawa. The watch is called Murakumo, time-only piece. A three-hander, so to speak, with seconds on the sub-dial. Black dial, Breguet numerals, spade hands that are detailed by hand, as you can see. Beautiful black dial with the sub-dial subtly sunken at 6 o'clock with a case that scales right under 37 millimeters in diameter, and it's rendered in stainless steel. The aesthetics are very much in the in line with classic Patek Philippe Calatravas of your 30s, 40s, 50s pieces. Slightly enlarged here, of course, which makes it, I think, both more wearable as a modern dress watch, but also by our standards today, still quite conservatively sized and discreetly worn. This is a team of two watchmakers, Yusuke Kikuchi and Tomonari Nakagawa. I'm sorry if I'm butchering their names, which I certainly am, my Japanese being non-existent. Beautiful piece with the original certificate dating the watch back to March 2023. First time Phillips sells a watch by this Japanese maker. Again, very beautiful. Looks very much like a slightly modernized take on a classic Calatrava shape. Very tasteful, very beautiful. And lot 41 has a pre-auction estimate set between 12,700 to 25,400 in US dollars. We are going to look at lot 212. This is a special request by my Instagram friend. $1526 is the companion reference, so to speak, to 1518. It comes from those series of complicated wristwatches that were released by Patek Philippe in that World War II period. And it represents one of the first watches of this sort to be made in serial production. It is a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar. In many ways, it is more simple, more pure compared to the 1518, which of course has a busier dial as well, because that also has a chronograph. So some might aesthetically preferable. I like how Arabic numerals alternate with polished gold pips for the hour markers. Love the size and proportion of feuille or leaf-shaped hands. The moon phase indicators are always more artisanal from that time period. And you see that is also a pointer date that encircles the sector for the seconds. And obviously the true aperture above the signature at 12 o'clock. The wickets are for the day of the week and month. The movement is very nice and clean. And again, the architecture is very classic, with the central bridge placed just so, in combination with those two finger bridges, so that the going train, the gear train, is nicely exposed and visible once the case back is lifted, of course, right? And the magic of these kinds of movements from that time period is precisely that they weren't made to be seen, yet they are so beautifully finished in such detail and with such care that they're still amazing to look at, and in so many ways so much more beautiful than many movements more industrially produced in our day. Now, your specific question was about the dial, the swan neck regulator as well. Again, beautiful. By the way, obviously, from this time period, the movements might not bear a Geneva hallmark, but that doesn't mean they are deficient in any way, right? You know, this is the standard. This is the golden standard that was then regulated and, you know, put into a specific kind of document that made it the hallmark of Geneva, the hallmark of that distinction, right? This is the kind of work that seal aspires to and finally certifies. Now, your specific question was about the dial, and there are a few things I can say about that. One, when it comes to Patek Philippe dials from this particular period, the brand has in the past and still does restore their own dials, right? So this is something to keep in mind. So you will see a lot of times dials in vintage Patek watches with the contours of these wickets losing their distinction. The engraved or enameled details, including the brand signature and possibly numbers and scales, you know, minute scales, second scales, whatever scales. Again, kind of becoming even with the dial because of how the dial was cleaned and restored. And again, sometimes this is done by third parties. I'm not saying that's never done. But unlike many other brands, like Rolex never does that, right? If a dial needs restoration and they're going to do anything about it, they usually take that, slap on a new dial. Things have changed a little bit, right? Now they have their specific restoration workshop in Geneva for vintage watches specifically, where you, I think, have to send it in to get a quote, and you pay $1,500 in advance, or at least that was the last price I was quoted. And then they will give you, of course, a much fatter bill with an entire inventoried list of things they want to do. Coming back to this, the good thing about this dial is I don't think it's restored or touched in any way, right? It's not perfect, or it's like perfectly imperfect in a way. It's vintage, it's tropicalized. If you can see it in person, if you contact them directly, I'm sure they can even arrange some sort of video conferencing opportunity for you. They should, at least. Something to keep in mind. Or maybe you already like it from the pictures, but it has this sort of chocolate brown shade to it. You can also, when you scroll down here, you see the two specialists, Alexandre Coppi and Tiffany To. I'm sure they're both brilliant. I don't personally know Tiffany To. Alexandre is a perfect gentleman, both in appearance and comportment. So if you contact him, whether you call him or email him, he can also give you much more detailed condition reports, which I think you can get a glimpse on once you sign in to the website as well, because there's always a condition report attached to the lot essays as well. So you can get a detailed sense there, but I would say, why not reach out? Why not talk to the specialist if you are talking? Oh, Ryan's, thank you so much, man. This matters a lot. I really appreciate you. I'm honored to know you as well. The goal has officially ended, but it means we can at least carry on this venture until midnight at least, and we have at least half an hour more. So lot 212, again, I like it. I like the aesthetics of this watch. Yes, it's not perfect. It's not, the dial is not pristine. It is very much a tropical dial, which I don't like romanticizing in this oblique and general way, because a lot of the shadier gray market profiteers and vintage dealers have made a fortune out of branding what are essentially damaged products as something exotic and interesting. I don't think that's the case. But from my personal preference, I like pieces like this that that are untouched, that are unrestored, compared to restored pieces that look perfect. And again, this is a watch literally from the period of the Second World War, right? They're not going to be, for the most part, new old stock pieces. Literally from 1951, it does come with the archival extract, which specifies that it was originally delivered with a silver dial. Apparently, that's what it says. The lot essay specifies that the watch first appeared on the market at Sotheby's in New York in 1989, and then again at Phillips in May 2002, both times with this black dial that the market accepts as being original to this piece. Furthermore, the movement number is etched inside the dial, as common with complicated Patek Philippe models of the time. So I don't think there's any kind of funny business going on there. But again, that being said, if any of these things that are detailed in the lot essay and that I underlined again, in terms of the condition of the dial, in terms of the provenance of the dial, which looks original in the watch, even though the archival extract from Patek says the watch was delivered with a silver dial. If any of this looks off to you, you should not, bid on this watch because it's still a considerable amount of money, right? You are looking at, about $250,000, right? It's easy to say. You have to be happy with what you get, right? And then I think in this segment, when it comes to the 1518s, 1526s, 2499s of the world, you would rather get an example and pay market value or a little above that you would be happy with, possibly forever, than get one and have regrets later and say like, I would have really liked a pristine dial on this, right? I would have really liked a silver dial on this, So these are all very legitimate concerns. After all, we are looking at, again, an estimated value of 150,000 to 300,000 Swiss francs, 191K to 381K when you translate that amount to US dollars. Yeah, tell me about it. That's my MO as well. One day maybe. One day we will be sitting in the same room, raising our paddles, and maybe, not being outpriced for most of these lots. Who knows? 208 is one of my favorite pieces. You guys know that I like the original Datograph a lot more than the up-down, the one with the power reserve indicator, which is also larger and thicker. That being said, of course, the Lumen editions of A. Lange und Söhne are always very captivating, with the semi-transparent luminous dials with the discs. Right, you have a main dial that's tinted sapphire, translucent, which means you can take a glimpse of the main plate, see that circular graining, the perlage finish. And that the subsidiary dials, including the tachymeter scale, the date discs, the power reserve indicator, they all have luminous material, which means that they can absorb the sun rays, the daylight, the UV rays, so to speak, and be luminous at night. And I remember talking to Max Büsser, who was telling me that one of the boons of Chanel's investment in MBNF was that he could go back to collecting watches again, that he finally had years after years of toiling and putting all the money he had into his business. He could finally spend some money on watches. And one of the first watches he bought was a Lange one, Lumen. And of course, being a Günther Blümlein protege himself, getting a Lange watch like that has a lot of meaning for him. But again, serious collectors of Lange all like Lumen, even though to an outsider it might look quote unquote gimmicky. That's never been my opinion, but I've heard that being said, but mostly by people who have not necessarily seen these watches in person and handled them. Yes, it is a divergence from the usual Teutonic aesthetic, perhaps, that they so readily exude. However, I think it's a great, unique take for limited editions like that. And this is one of only 200 pieces made in this configuration. The datograph up and down, the definitive chronograph, definitive hierologic chronograph of the 21st century already, with the flyback functionality. And here is a look at the movement. Voilà, what a surprise. They actually have a shot of the movement this time. Internally, because of its multi-layered architectural design, this movement was called the cathedral, apparently, within Lange. It really deserves that kind of name. Even to me, the play of colors in this movement is inspiring. You know, between the German silver chronograph bridges and the stainless steel chronograph works, the heat blued screws that hold down the gold chaton, in which, you know, with polished countersinks, in which the rubies are set, the swan neck regulator that sits on the balance cock, which is freehand engraved. Beautiful. Platinum case, of course. Number 66 out of the 200-piece limited edition datograph up and down lumen, 41 millimeters in diameter, in platinum. The estimated value of the piece is between 127,000 to 254,000 in US dollars. Hey, Ozzy, isn't it? It's such a beautiful piece, and getting this kind of look at it again with chronograph movements, unless it is designed that way. When you have an exhibition case back, most of the works are already there. But with lumen, it's a different kind of show, right? You know, with that translucent dial and the luminous aspects of the movement, and of course that classic 10 o'clock pusher as well, which allows the quick adjustment of the date. And of course you have the start stop here, reset / flyback at 4 o'clock, which means again you can just keep the chronograph running and reset everything with one button. It will jump back to 0 and, of course, start running right away. Hit the like button. Ladies and gentlemen, we have at least 20 more minutes. But honestly, I want to just write it out today, since Ryan has been so generous. My friend via Instagram has been so generous. So we are just going to finish this auction. Let's look at these two beautiful Breguet perpetual calendars. Lot 201. A very dressy piece. It still has the round classic Breguet wristwatch case with that smooth sloped bezel, the coin-edged decoration that covers the case band, but the lugs are not there, obviously, because it has that unique chain style bracelet that is integrated onto the case. Reference 3050BA, with the BA indicating that it is in 18 karat yellow gold. Very balanced and classic dial layout with the pointer dates at 3 o'clock, the day of the week at 9 o'clock, with the month at 12 o'clock, and that also wraps itself around the leap year indicator as well. The opening for the moon phase indicator is at 6 o'clock. And again, as with a lot of beautiful Breguet watches, the dial is engine turned by hand. And again, each sector, as you see, has that coin-edged detailing that frames it. There are two plaques. At 9 o'clock, it bears the Breguet signature. At 3 o'clock, it bears the movement number. The crown is capped with a sapphire cabochon, which is a beautiful complement to the heat blued hands. Breguet hands, of course, for hands, hour and minutes. And also, of course, the backdrop of the night sky for the moon phase indicator as well. The case is beautifully preserved, as you can see from the crispness of all the details on the case back. The bracelet on its clasp is stamped GRG, which identifies it as the work of Gilbert Gaschen, one of the respected bracelet makers. They have, for example, made the bracelets for AP's Cobra timepieces. So, again, specialized makers who produce these kinds of bracelets, and there are not many these days, right? In the way that some brands have absorbed them into their own manufacture in the age of vertical integration. But this is not the kind of work that is even done in-house by many brands. I mean, Lange enthusiasts would know the Pforzheim-based jeweler Wellendorf that made bracelets for them and many others, including Patek. And I found out recently that the new chain-style bracelet made for the pink gold ellipse that Patek released in the recent years, that bracelet is still made by Wellendorf. So imagine, again, this is really rare work to produce at that level. But yeah, this is a beautiful watch. Of course, very much dressier, much ornate, much more ornate than most pieces you would see. Breguet already makes watches like that, but this integrated chain style bracelet really takes things to the next level, which may or may not be to your preference, but this is lot 201 from the Phillips Decade 1 auction. Reference 3050 in yellow gold, and the estimated value of the piece is between 25,400 to 50,900 in US dollars. Right next to it, in lot 202, you have the perpetual calendar chronograph by Breguet. Again, another beautiful piece. Once again, we have 39 3610 BA, 18 carats in yellow gold. The case is still relatively compact, 38 millimeters. But it is more of a classic Breguet case, as you can see, with a beautiful polished bezel, round case, with the entire case band fluted, with teardrop lugs. And honestly, again, it's very nicely laid out. And the dial itself is even more ornately decorated with at least 3 different patterns. You have this hobnail style pattern at the center of the dial. You have a basket weave for the 2 subdials at 3 and 9, specifically for the interior of the chronograph registers. And then you have vague or wave-like decoration for the clouds that frame the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. Of course, a lot of the sectors are circularly brushed, which people in this context sometimes call Breguet frosting. Again, these dials look absolutely stunning in person. If you have not experienced it, it's hard to simply put it into words. There is something about gold base for dials that is engine turned by hand. The result is captivating. If it is real guilloche work, it really makes a huge difference. And again, you have the pointer date at 3 o'clock, which encircles a 30-minute totalizer. Days of the week at 9 o'clock, which wraps itself around the continuous running seconds. And this is a French calendar, so the days are actually fully spelled out, right? Lundi, mardi, mercredi, etc. And the months, in fact, are just marked by their initial letter at 12 o'clock, which encircles a leap year indicator with the B standing for leap year in this case, again, since this is a French calendar. And the plaque is actually at 6 o'clock, where you have the Breguet signature and the movement number specifically. And the dial is marked guilloche main, engine turned by hand, at 6 o'clock as well. And you see, again, every sector is delineated by that coin-edged decoration. And of course, when you peek through the exhibition case back, you will see that this is the architecture of the classic hand-wound Lemania movements that we see as Omega 321 powering the Moonwatch, that we see as the CH27 powering generations of Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronographs, as well as hand-wound chronographs too, in certain instances. And also many independent makers, including Daniel Roth and Roger Dubuis, among others, have used this for their hand-wound chronograph creations. And of course, Breguet, which assimilated the Lemania manufacture into its own body in modern time, has used it and still uses it. This is, again, a beautiful version of that movement, which in this instance has kind of U-shaped chronograph bridge, which is signature Breguet, swan neck regulator. Patek would have covered the column wheel with a cap, with a polished countersink and everything. I kind of like seeing column wheels though, so it's not that I don't mind. I actually prefer it like this. But this is a beautiful movement. You know, to this day, I think it's still one of my absolute favorites. And the teardrop lugs, of course, they look absolutely stunning. And the condition of the watch is quite nice as well. Of course, it's not a thin watch, right? I think 38 millimeter balances out quite well, but something to keep in mind. This is the Breguet 3610 perpetual calendar chronograph from the 90s in yellow gold, based on the Lemania legacy movement. The estimated value is between 31,300 to 62,500 in US dollars. Again, we are going to write this out. There's still a few more watches that I like to talk about. This is basically the reference that follows, 1526. 2497 is the perpetual calendar counterpart to the 2499. With sweep center seconds. And there's also a magnifying glass for the two openings above the signature so that they may be read a little easier. Pointer dates that wraps itself around the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. But you see the dial aesthetics are quite similar to 1526, even though obviously the case looks more like the 2499 than anything. First series dial, which again is very resembling of the 1526. And you can see how sharply defined the calendar windows are, which again testifies to the largely good condition of the dial itself. This is an example in pink gold. And it has a case made by Venga, which once again, in this case, is the larger case, but not necessarily the one that's even more prized by the collectors. People really love the cases made by Émile Vichet. The claw lugs have a certain definition to them that's very hard to find in anything else. except perhaps things that are made later by Jean-Pierre Agman. This is the beautiful movement under that case back. Under that Bombay case back. And you see in this case, the Geneva hallmarks are visible because this piece, of course, comes from a later period, right? 54 in this case. Nicely preserved example. Here's the inside of the case back. The case maker is identified by this key sign with the specific number. And of course, by its design details and nuances as well, but that's one sure way to confirm where the case was made. And here's a look from the profile where you can get the lines of those fluted lugs or stepped lugs, as they're also sometimes called. A beautiful example of the 2497 Patek Philippe perpetual calendar. First series dial, sweep center seconds with a magnifying glass on the crystal. The piece has an estimated value somewhere between 572,000 to 1,140,000 in US dollars. Thank you, Ryan. Nice to see you. We have, I mean, I know you might want to go to bed or move on, but I think I'm going to go for another 15 minutes or so because there's still a few watches that I want to pay attention to. Like this modern marvel. We're looking at lot 193, 38.3 millimeters in diameter. This is a platinum piece, a perpetual calendar chronograph in a monopusher configuration. Look at how beautifully that case is finished as well, with distinct channels on the flanks. I think it is the kind of dial design that you would either love or hate. You know, some people might hate it because it's too busy. Others might prize the variety and legibility of the information that it conveys. I leave that to you to decide. But the blue sunburst dial is a very nice complement to the platinum case. And again, you have the monopusher chronograph here at 2 o'clock, the single button for that chronograph at 2 o'clock, and the split second pusher integrated onto the crown, obviously at 3 o'clock. 60-minute counter at 3 o'clock, continuous running seconds at 9, pointer dates at 6, 2 porthole like openings that give you day-night indication at around 7:30 and leap year indication at 4:30. And one of my favorite things about this watch is how it places the moon phase indicator, the most romantic and possibly least useful complication, but that makes it even more beautiful. The moon phase indicator, that is the focal point of this watch at 12 o'clock. It's beautiful from this angle too. You're looking at the 5372 perpetual calendar monopusher split seconds chronograph, obviously with indicators for leap year, day and night, and moon phase. Built on the base of that legacy Lemania movement, whose architecture you can probably discern even under the split second module. As I mentioned, Patek has that cap for the column wheel with a polished countersink for the screw. What a marvelous piece, though. It also has an additional solid case back if you just need to feel the heft of this platinum watch. And the pin pusher, of course. The lot comes with all the accoutrement, the certificate of origin, the product literature, the photograph of this specific watch, which Patek usually includes as part of the set with these sorts of prestige models, the additional solid case back, the setting pin, the leather portfolio to hold the documents, the fitted presentation box, as well as the outer packaging. Patek Philippe 5372P at lot 193 with an estimated value between 318 to 636,000 in US dollars. All right. Ricardo, that's good to know. Good to know, my friend. I did say and included in my thumbnail the lot 2, an independent. So I will certainly include that, but I want to look at this Polipetto. This is one of those Rolex dive watches that are spec'd and in fact issued. The Polipetto comes from the symbol because it has this octopus logo at around 9 o'clock. This is a Sea Dweller reference 16600, which was made and issued for the Italian police's divers corps. This particular example is presented in new old stock condition. And I understand also as a full set. The original warranty cards stamped by La Spezia, Italy retailer Montre et Bijoux di Giorgioni, dated December 2008, numbered sales tag, product literature, bracelet removal tool, green document holder, Rolex hang tag, as well as the fitted presentation box and its outer packaging. The case back is also signed in addition to the logo that you find, the octopus logo you find on the dial. It celebrates their 50th anniversary, I think, of the divers corps of the Italian police. And this is the set as it's displayed here. That's the bracelet removal tool. Gotta love a Sea Dweller like this. It's so beautiful. I love the 40 mil Sea Dwellers. You know, hopefully one day I'll get 1665. This is, however, again, Rolex Sea Dweller Polipetto, as they call it, for the octopus logo on the dial. It's a Sea Dweller issued to the Italian police's divers corps. This is a new old stock example valued at 102,000 to 203,000 in US dollars. It was lot 184. think I want to talk about maybe 3 more watches, but I will start that with lot number 2 because I would be remiss to skip over a watch that I presented in my thumbnail. Simon Brett, as you know, is one of the hottest independent makers of recent years. He has won the Horological Revelation Prize in the 2023 edition of the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève, the so-called Oscars of the horological world. The chronomètre artisan actually brings together a number of specialist makers tapping into their particular expertise to put together this watch that showcases their specialties. It started with a 12-piece subscription set in zirconium. And later, quote unquote, a regular production piece in titanium, which also sold out, and that was made in about 60 pieces. And this is a titanium series that is going to be made in 99 pieces. This example comes from that series, 39 millimeters in titanium, beautifully finished, even with the screws concaved and black polished. Very special effect. The movement is made by an artisan called Yasmina Anti, and it's hand engraved. Very beautiful work. The gears, again, are called wolf teeth. Very singularly finished. And of course, this piece is in impeccable condition, almost as new, although I'm sure it's been worn a couple of times. Look at that balance bridge as well. Very nice work overall. Beautiful inside out, front and back. The Simon Brett chronomètre artisan in its titanium edition. Fantastic example. It brought its eponymous maker the Horological Revelation Prize a couple of years ago in the Oscars of the horological world. And lot 2 comes with an estimated value between 76,300 to 153,000 in US dollars. What is my current realistic dream piece? 150 and less? I think it would be an open worked perpetual calendar, Royal Oak AP. I think you can find a decent example. Right, let me see. I'm not talking about the more, more contemporary models. I'm speaking of something older. Let me see if I can find a nice example on Chrono 24 that I can show you relatively quickly. I mean, it doesn't even have to be open worked, but that's the first thing that came to mind. By the way, I think the stainless steel of the new movement is widely available on the secondary market within that price range. It's not a bad choice. You know what? I actually, forget about the open work. I think I found what I would want. This is something I saw and documented on the wrist of Giulio Papi, still the head of AP Le Locle, one half of Renault et Papi, the high complications workshop that has been integrated to AP but has served many. Platinum in stainless steel and platinum, the octagonal bezel as well as the tapering interlinks are in platinum and the rest is in stainless steel. Black dial with the silver outer rings for the registers. Blackened open worked rotor that interpolates the octagonal bezel design, which of course is the definitive perhaps design signature of the Royal Oak, with a supplemental white gold 21 karat weight. It's really a beautiful piece, 39 millimeters in diameter. So in the classic proportions that resemble the Royal Oak Jumbo more than anything. Not 41 millimeters like most of the new generation complicated Royal Oaks. Please hit the like button, by the way. I think people are waking up to their Saturdays already. That's why I have more viewers now. But yeah, this is the first thing that comes to mind for me. But honestly, we don't need to go all the way up to 150. My dream has always been to acquire a Royal Oak Jumbo, so I would be fine with a 15202, relatively early example, still with that single shell monocoque case, so I serial, so to speak, from 2013, the 40th anniversary version, which has all the aesthetic elements of the original, of course, the exhibition case back in stainless steel. That's more than enough. Any flavor of that is great. The 15202 BC is great with the salmon dial. That's very unique. And it's not repeated in this generation, so that could be a different flavor. And that's, I think you can acquire something like this around 110, 120. So a lot of money, yes, but still falls under that 150 bar you set. But yeah, too much Royal Oak. I think too many Royal Oaks. But hey, 25820 SP, 15202 ST, 15202 BC. Those all are great. All right, I think I can do two more. I find that energy, I find that enthusiasm today, so I'm not going to just kill the live stream for no reason whatsoever, just because I'm tired. What is that? We will sleep when we are dead. You can just continue. This is a cool one too, actually. This is one of my favorites of this generation, although I really like the titanium bulk metallic glass with that smoked red dial. I like the pink gold with the smoked gray dial. They're all great. I like, I have mentioned this many times, but if anyone is listening for the last time, I like what they did with the jumbo in this generation, where you don't just have different case materials with the same flavor, more or less, often with a blue dial. Now you have very specific aesthetic to each variation of the jumbo, which I think is great. And that's something they had started already with what they did with the white gold, with the platinum. But I think it's much more established now and very clear, with the models clearly delineated from each other. Okay, I promised 2 more pieces without blabbering about. Here's a beautiful mill sub. Let's do something different. We looked a lot of complicated pieces, a lot of Pateks, and some independents tonight. We did look at that Italian police force divers corps piece, which was a sea dweller. And this is kind of a progenitor of that sort of piece, purpose-oriented, in this case, military issued. The classic mill sub 5513. So one of the iconic references of the Submariner, except in this mil-spec, military issued version with fixed lugs and those broad sword hands that distinguish it. This circle T at 6 o'clock above the depth rating specifies the luminous material on the dial, tritium. And the sweep center seconds hand as an arrow tip, which again is distinctive about this fully graduated dive timing bezel. And of course, the case back is inscribed with the issue numbers, which are absolutely necessary and authentic to this kind of piece. This is from 1974, or 75, which you can see in this number here. Looks beautiful. Made for the British Navy. And these were delivered in the 70s, roughly between 1972 to 79, to the Royal Navy and the British Army in about 1,200 examples. This particular one, as can be discerned from the 0552 code, was delivered to the Royal Navy with the NATO designation and specific issue numbers and year of issue all listed there. Nicely preserved case, strong lugs, beautifully aged dial with a lovely color on the luminous material. I have tried it on. I have tried on the IWC Eternal calendar. It's a great watch. It's a great watch. It's not necessarily my dream watch, but there's a reason that that watch was given the grand prize in that Oscars of the horological world that we were talking about. This mill sub from 1975 is at lot number 78, the Rolex Submariner 5513, made for the British Navy. The piece has an estimated value between 127,000 to 254,000 in US dollars. Please hit the like button for support. If you have followed the link from Twitter or Instagram, do subscribe and hit the bell icon, because I have this sort of in-depth, long-form watch content on a daily basis. I really appreciate your support, especially my friend through Instagram and Ryan here, who have very generously contributed. Again, for an independent channel like this, for an independent platform like this, it's absolutely vital. I cannot exist without your support. So always consider sending super chats. I always give value for your money, answer all the questions you ask. So feel free to support the kind of knowledge and insight I share here on this platform and on Instagram. Right, we were talking about Gilbert Gashen, the bracelet maker. The Cobra bracelets are made by that maker too. We were looking at the Breguet 3050 BA, the perpetual calendar with the chain style bracelet. That was made by the same maker who makes the that bracelet. Okay, I'll do two. I'll do 110, which is the Breguet perpetual calendar minute repeater, and I will also do I had my eye on something. What am I missing here? Okay. All right. Missing something. There was something I wanted to discuss. I think that's it. 178, Bernhard Lederer central impulse chronometer. It's rendered in white gold, 44 millimeters in diameter. So it's a big watch. Number 13 from a limited edition of 25 pieces. The open worked registers on the dial on the left side are two escape wheels at the end of two separate gear trains, each with its own barrel. Each of these independent gear trains have a 10-second remontoire constant force mechanism that rewinds a small spring every 10 seconds and thus ensures an even flow of power to the escapement. And each gear train has its seconds hand, so you have two seconds hand registers moving in different directions. And so that's the parlor trick of those two rings of the central impulse chronometer. Very technically impressive and quite beautiful in its own way. It won the Innovation Prize in 2021 in the GPHG, Oscars of the Watch World. Originally launched in pink gold and white gold, 25 pieces each. This comes from the white gold edition. Lot 178, with an estimated value between 76,300 to 153,000 in US dollars. The movement exhibition is beautiful too, because again, it is uninterrupted by a bezel, so you have that sloped crystal, which gives you a view of the movement even from an angle. Beautiful piece, incredible work of independent watchmaking in our time. Bernhard Lederer, Central Impulse Chronometer at lot 178. And finally, and it is the 250th anniversary of Breguet, so there are a lot of Breguet watches at Phillips's Decade 1 auction as well, which celebrates their 10th anniversary in the world of watches. You're looking at Breguet 3737 BA, 37 millimeters in diameter, in 18 karat yellow gold. This is a perpetual calendar minute repeater from the 90s. Again, a fantastic engine turned dial, guilloche dial, turned by hand. Moon phase indicator at 6, months at 12 o'clock, also incorporating a leap year indicator, pointer date at 3, days of the week at 9 o'clock. Every single sector, again, delineated by a coin-edged framing. All the sectors are circularly brushed, radially brushed, I should say. Heat blued hands, which aid with the legibility. And of course, coordinate beautifully with that night sky of the moon phase indicator. English calendar in this case. The two plaques bear the signature of the brand at 9 o'clock and the number of the movement at 3 o'clock. Fluted case band all around with teardrop lugs. On the left flank of the case, you have this fin-like slide to engage the chiming functions of the watch at will for the minute repeater. And this is the movement. Looks absolutely stunning with the hammers, black polished, swan neck regulator, 3-finger bridge. Fantastic piece. Minute repeating perpetual calendar. 37 millimeters in yellow gold. The piece comes with a blank Breguet certificate of origin, a winding box, its presentation box, and outer packaging in this case. The Breguet 3737BA at lot 110. The piece has a pre-auction estimate that sets its value in the range between 63,600 to 127,000 in US dollars. All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for generously contributing, Ryan and my friend from Instagram. Thank you so much. You make everything worthwhile. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please hit the like button. Send the link to other watch enthusiasts and collectors. If you follow me on Instagram, you can reach me via DM anytime, basically, and I respond to just about everything. It might not be always on your terms, but I am there. I respond to all the comments, all the DMs. So if you need me, that's the best way to reach me. If you need my services, that's the best way to reach me. And you can always leave a comment to a specific video on YouTube. That would be a great way to engage with that specific content, and I would be more than happy to respond to you there as well. If you want to support the channel, and again, this is an independent platform that's not injected with some kind of capital. It's not sponsored by anyone from within the industry, even though I cover anything and everything in all these auctions. The auction houses so far have not supported me either. And this is ultimately actually good as long as you will support me, because at the end of the day, that allows me to speak freely without being guided by any other interests than the interests of the collectors. So I can actually look out for you and advocate for you, and also show you the best way to spend your hard-earned money. But for that, obviously, I need your support. I need to be able to keep the lights on. I need to pay the bills. This is my livelihood. So please consider sending in super chats. Again, they can always be with watch-related questions or just a show of support. In either case, I think I always give you great value for money. There are other ways to support the channel if you don't want to do it through YouTube, and those methods I outline in the video description. Otherwise, I'm always available to you. You're most welcome, Ryan. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully, if not tomorrow, on Sunday. Take care. I appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll be with you soon enough. Don't forget to hit the like button.